Today, what I want to talk about is the power of your influence. Never underestimate the influence that you have on other people's lives. The people in your family, the people that you work with, the people at your friends, the people at your church, the people in your neighborhood. Because Paul's letter to the Philippians in this session deals in the second chapter with influence. Specifically, and I'll mention it later, he talks about shining like stars in a dark world. So today I want to begin by asking you a question. Who's played a significant role in your life? Who's been an influence in your life? I've had many in my life, coaches and teachers and ministers, and most notably my own father, who got up every day and went to work and influenced my life by his work ethic. Not with his words, but by the way he worked. Recently there was an interview done with Warren Buffett on an HBO documentary. And in that documentary, they asked him, who's been a big influence in your life? And you remember that Warren Buffett is the billionaire who owns Berkshire Hathaway, brilliant investor. Now you may not know this, but at one time he was just not wealthy at all. He came from a very normal, ordinary, middle-income family. But you're surprised to know that the biggest influence in his life was not some Wall Street tycoon or someone like that, was instead his own father. His father told him, I don't care much about money. That's not the right scorecard for me and shouldn't be for you. Instead, the right scorecard is your own internal inner scorecard. What matters most to you? And once you know your scorecard, you live by that scorecard. You live by those core values. And so Warren Buffett said his whole life he has not judged himself on what others think or following popular trends, but instead by going by his own values and his own intuition. He said, my dad is the one that believed in me and had the biggest influence on my life. Who are the people in your life that have influenced you and has influenced your success? Well, that's what this next section of Paul's letter to the Philippians really is all about here in chapter 2. In verse 15 of chapter 2, Paul says this. He said, as you live your life in this world around us, your lives should shine. That a light should come up out of your life, and you should shine like bright lights for Christ in the world. And people should be able to see that Jesus had such an impact on your life that he is flowing out of you with love and joy and goodness and peace. So much so it becomes attractive to others. In fact, if you look in the heading of your Bible over in chapter 2, it'll say shine brightly, shine as lights, shine like stars. Now, they understood this, what he was talking about, because Paul had been such an influence on them, and there was no question for them who had influenced their life. Paul founded the church, taught the church, instructed the church, and stayed with them for a long time, gave them Jesus Christ, changed their lives, started the whole thing for them. He'd been an influence, and he continued to be an influence by writing this letter to them. So they were paying attention then when he said shine like stars. They leaned in to listen what it means to be an influence. And he gave them some very specific instructions. He said, first of all, if you're going to influence others, you need to use encouragement. Encourage others. Paul, throughout this letter, encourages them. And specifically in this chapter, he says, I see Christ at work in you. God is at work in you, giving you the power and the desire to do what you're going to do. The second thing that he uses to encourage them, he says, use good words. Have a good, positive attitude when you deal with others. In other words, he says, don't argue, don't grumble, don't complain. Instead, use your words in a way that are a blessing to others. Don't give anyone any reason to critique you or to criticize you. The third thing he says, if you're going to be an influence on the life of other people, set a good moral standard. Live at a higher standard of moral excellence than the world around you. Don't let the world influence you. You be the one that influences the world around you. Be people of integrity. He says here specifically, live clean, innocent lives, lives that will honor Christ. And then he says this, the power of joy. Nothing more influential than being a joyful person, the joy that comes out of your life living in the midst of adversity. When joy comes out of your life, it's an influence to others. And the fifth thing is, live a life of service. Your service to others, Paul says, is your offering to God. And when you serve others, you help and you influence others too. You may not realize how much influence you have, but you have a great deal of influence. Never underestimate the power of your influence. And you get to decide how that influence will be lit. That could be for good or for bad. And I would encourage you to look around you at your family, your friends, your coworkers, and ask yourself, what kind of influence do you want to be? I once asked some of the kids in our church, who at Middletown Christian Church has been the most influential person in your church, in our church, in your life? And almost every single kid says the same thing. Their middle school Sunday school teacher, Skipper Martin. Skipper Martin teaches them how to shake hands, teaches them how to give a proper greeting, how to look someone in the eye when you're speaking to them. He teaches all the great skills about what it means to be a good person, to present yourself well before others, and he shares the love of Jesus with them. That's what I mean. You know, Skipper's had some big important roles in the government and the city and done some great things in life, but if you ask him what's been the most joyful part of his life, the influence that he's had on the lives of teenagers for more than 30 years or more. So let me ask you as we end this session, who in your life has been an influence to you? And the second question is, who do you have the power to influence?